First and foremost, I think most of what he said was a red herring. A red herring is this very smelly fish that you pull across the path of running dogs. And the reason it was a red herring, because he said that I spoke about science. I specifically said he knows better than I do. I specifically didn't use it as my key argument for the finitude of the universe. And he wanted to correct me on something that I didn't even mention myself. This is what you call, not rhetoric, not intellectual argument, it's what you call sophistry. It's rhetoric with crap, frankly. Now, and I'm not saying it to be rude, because it's a typical Krausian fashion. A Krausian fashion trying to win over the whole audience, make a hoo-ha in the beginning. And imagine I did that when I walked into, one day I had interfaith dialogue. And imagine I walked into a Jewish mosque or a hall that was public, and I basically said, I don't want to do things your way, but I want to discuss with you, but I'm not going to do things your way. Is that tolerance? Is that how you connect with other people? He wants to know about our tradition, but he won't even ask them, why do you have this? And another straw man, justice and equal rights. You think they're saying that because they don't have any justice or equal rights? My wife is up there, ask my wife. What's the matter with you? See, these presumptions from Fox News, you're an academic, but when you talk about Islam, it's based on the Fox News narrative, and I'm going to expose this in a minute. Now, the first point I want to make. Now, you used the word a priori more than 3 times, but you rejected deductive thinking. I mean, isn't a priori deductive? I mean, you can't have your cake and eat it, sir.
I tried to talk on your level.
That's the first point. The second point I'd like to make. Actually, let me calm down. The second point I would like to make is that, see, we're not rejecting inductive arguments. Of course we're not. You're forgetting the inductive method, the scientific method. Do you know where it came from, sir? Do you know where it came from?
I know. In fact, there's a remarkable scientific mathematical tradition in the Arab world, if that's what you're going to talk about.
I'm going to talk about Ibn al-Haytham in his book on optics.
Sure. Yeah.
Read the works of David Lindbergh and others, historians of philosophy and science. And they say it came from Islam. You know why? Because Islam doesn't reject...
No, they came from the Arab world. They didn't come from Islam.
Well, let me give you the link. Let me give you the link. Okay? أَفَلَا يَنْظُرُونَ إِلَى الْإِبِلِ كَيْفَ خُلِقَتْ. Have you not seen empiricism, the creative thing like a camel, and how it was formed or how it was created? This was the basis, and this was the poetic justification for the entire scientific method. As Muslims, we go where the science takes us. But we're not stupid. Deductive arguments, they are necessarily true. If you wanted to discuss my argument, you had to break down the premises, which you didn't. You just talking about the infinite and the circle and the circumference. I knew we were going to do this because it's all mathematics. You remember what I said?
No, it's a physical circle.
Yeah, but let me make a point. I said the quantifiable infinite cannot be actualized in the physical world, something that you agreed with. 1 second. And I said there's nothing wrong with the qualitative infinite. And qualitative infinites can exist infinitely. For example, mathematicians discuss. Yes, so where's the infinite there?
That's the length. You think this is a length is a physical quantity?
That is.
Length a physical quantity?
That is, yeah.
Okay, the length of this and the length of that, okay, the ratio of those two lengths is an infinite number.
Yes, of course it is.
Okay.
But what is that length? What is that length?
1. This is the length 1 is 1 Kraus.
Okay,
These are pi Kraus.
1 second. Can you measure the straight line and can you measure the circumference? Yes or no?
I can measure it.
Well, that's quantifiable. Yeah. What you're talking about is in the mathematical realm of discourse, which has axioms and conventions, which makes sense. I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm agreeing with what you already agreed with in your own book, which from a quantifiable, discrete perspective, you can't have an infinite. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Discrete.
The discrete parts.
But who says it has to be discrete?
Oh, but that's your presupposition. Your presupposition. Actually, you brought your assumptions, Fox News, by the way, and other stuff, and you think you've got an answer. I have time. Let me finish this, please.
Okay, because I'm going to teach you different calculus. Newton invented a lot.
Yeah, I know, but calculus is based on axioms and conventions in the mathematical realm of discourse.
It describes how things work.
Yes. Let me make a point. So, that's the first point. Oh, dear. Okay, then you spoke about, for example, 0 is simple as Occam's razor. Again, you've misconstrued what Occam's razor is. Occam's razor is not only the simplest explanation, but it has to have greater explanatory scope and explanatory power. 0 has no explanatory scope or power concerning the origins of the universe from that perspective.
I'll explain it how it does.
The other point I like to make is you spoke about, for example, hell and justice, and look at all these people that are going to hell. Again, another huge straw man. You've misrepresented Islamic theology. We have a very nuanced theology, sir. I think the best thing to do, if you were sincere, you would have said, you know, Hamza, I don't get this. I haven't read this before. I'm just making my own mind up because I watch videos of Christopher Hitchens and he's an authority to me. I don't know much. Can you tell me what Islam says about this issue? That would have been better, wouldn't it? But again, it's a straw man. And when it comes to things like hell, we believe God is all just and all merciful, okay? No one disagrees with the concept of punishment, okay? You're not going to disagree with the concept of punishment, are you? So when it comes to people who haven't heard about Islam, there's a whole array of theologians like Ibn Taymiyyah and Al-Ghazali who said that there's going to be another form of justice for them. They may be tested on the Day of Judgment based on other prophetic traditions. It's not as simple as that. Okay, homosexuality is a sin. Again, you try to put words in my mouth, and that's not nice. That's not nice.
I asked you questions. I didn't.
You did, but I don't know if you try to answer them for me, which is quite interesting. Now, see, we don't believe homosexual tendencies per se are sinful. It's the manifestation of the homosexual act in public is sinful. Because we believe in our theology, let me just make the point, that we're given a package. We all have tendencies. People have tendencies, you know, the polygamists, for example, or other people have tendencies that may be seen negative or taboo. Other people have tendencies concerning various different things. And we believe this is a package that God has given us. But we have an empowering philosophy which says that God, okay, when He gives you these tendencies, whatever they are, whatever kind of inclinations we have, we use our aql, our intellect, by understanding the divine reality and what He wants from us, because God would know me better than I know myself. And He would say, fine, you have these tendencies, this is how you shape them. This is how you control them. Like, we don't believe in, like, we should be agitated purely based on the bestial aspects of man, whether it's heterosexual or homosexual. And by the way, you know, saying off to your mother is equivalent major sin as being a homosexual. So the point I'm trying to say is we don't condemn people per se. We don't say, you know what, I'm going to kill you. We appreciate every human being. They have spiritual needs, but we're not going to make up our own religion. We're not going to follow the Krausian religion, whatever he says. We're going to follow the divine reality. If he says homosexuality is a sin, it's a sin. Just like drinking alcohol is a sin for the Muslim. Or, for example, being harmful to human beings is a sin. Right? Just because I have a tendency and I'm a martial artist and I want to harm people, does that mean now, you know, God is wrong just because I have that tendency? I mean, that's not right. Anyway, I'm still looking for some strong counter-arguments you made to my points.
There were no points to actually make any counter-arguments.
Well, there were, because you didn't... okay, let's just put it simply.
Infinity doesn't exist. Yes, it does. Okay.
You didn't... No, I said the quantifiable infinite doesn't exist. I agree the infinite exists. Again, another straw man. The point I'm trying to say is this. We have a deductive argument that the universe is finite. If it's finite, it began to exist. If it began to exist, there are some logical possibilities. Please entertain those logical possibilities. If not, it's equivalent to you coming to my house, having a coffee, I'm talking to you, but you're talking to the window. And I know you have better morals and manners than that, because I know you're highly respected. And we do all respect you in some paradoxical way. But the point is, the point I'm trying to say, Professor Kraus, is that I think it's only fair if you want to pick and choose from the Fox News narrative that you actually trying to change that stance and say, right, what does Sharia law say? Do you have a book of Sharia law at home?
I asked you so I could learn.
No, but you were telling me. Do you have a book? Okay, do you have a book on Sharia law?
No.
And you make judgments, and okay, I have a book on atheism, I think it's based on nonsense, but I give you the intellectual epistemic respect to read your worldview. But you've come here you've come here blasé, almost arrogant, I don't want to judge you, and saying, you know, it's all rubbish, I'm not going to take any of his arguments, I know better than you, which you said that, and I do agree in physics you do. And you've come here making judgments on Sharia law, you don't even have a book on Sharia law.
That's why I asked questions.
And the point is...
Look, I'm sorry, that's why I asked questions. I asked you questions so I could learn. I asked what you thought as someone whose opinions I'm supposed to respect. And I wanted to know, did you think it was wrong? And I wanted to know why. There's no sense why homosexuality is wrong. I wanted to know what common sense tells you that homosexuality is wrong, except some self-proclaimed prophet telling you with no evidence.
There's a different point. Okay. Okay, let me ask Professor Kraus a question. Why is incest wrong?
It's not clear to me that it's wrong.
Okay.
It's clear to me. There's an evolution. No. Listen to me. Listen to me.
Wait. Let's give him the respect, please. He's got a justification.
You ask me a question, and if you want me to answer, I will.
Yeah, of course. Do it.
Okay. The point is, most societies have a taboo on incest, and it's an empirical one. Generally, incest produces genetic defects.
Yes.
Okay. And so in general, there's a physiological reason and a societal one why incest is wrong.
Yes.
Okay. But if you ask me the question, is it? And this is an interesting question. By the way, there's an ingrained incest taboo in almost all societies for that reason.
Sure.
Because societies want to persist, so it works. But if you ask me a priori, for example, the question, if a brother and a sister loved each other and used contraception, is there something absolutely morally wrong about that? And that, by the way, and it was once, and they went off and it didn't affect anything else, I'd have to think about it, because I don't think there's any absolute condemnation of that fact. If they love each other and care for each other and they go off and it doesn't affect anything else,
okay.
Would I recommend it? No. Would I be particularly happy about it? But would I be willing to listen to those arguments? If they were rational, maybe.
Okay, good. So, see, this is precisely the point I'm trying to make, Professor Kراوس, is that I find it quite interesting. Someone who adopts an atheist position would have strong moral judgments about a religious tradition, whereas your moral judgments, at best, are relative and subjective. Now, when you look about moral theory, from an Islamic perspective, in a religious perspective, you see that objective morals, that even pointing the finger and saying, you're wrong, you're nonsense, Sharia law is backward, these kind of strong emotive things, I think we can only be that emotive and strong in an objective sense if you have God as a grounding for your objective moral values. Because if you take God out of the picture, he's the only concept that transcends human subjectivity. Social pressure, that doesn't work. Look what happened in Nazi Germany. For example, evolution makes it end up being ephemeral and empty. If you look at the philosopher of science, Michael Rules, he said, you think loving thy neighbor as thyself is like you're referring above and beyond yourself. But essentially, it has no true meaning. It's just a product of survival and reproduction. So from this perspective, you don't have an ontological grounding for objective moral truths. The best you could do, what a lot of atheists have done, is, we believe in moral realism, which is moral truths are just moral truths because they are. Well, Islam just is, and the Prophet Muhammad upon him peace just is, and the Quran just is. That's not an argument. So the reason I asked you that question, sir, was to say, how on earth, from an intellectual perspective, can we point the finger at religions from a moral perspective? And especially the irony is, most of your articulation against Islam has had a moral vibe to it, not a rational one, because you didn't deal with the premises of my argument.
I did.
No, you didn't. You talked about infinity. And
I talked about causality, infinity, the words that you were throwing out.
Yes, and what did you say about causality?
I said, in fact, that it's quite likely that beginning of the universe causality isn't a good question. But if you understood the physics, you'd understand it.
Your presupposition of causality...
No, it's not my presupposition.
It is.
It's time doesn't exist.
Yes.
Space doesn't exist.
Okay, think about the statement, something produces an effect. Mm-hmm. Where is time as a definition there?
Produces.
No, it could be atemporal.
What do you mean atemporal? You explain to me clearly what you mean in a physical way. And
okay.
Don't just give me English language. Give me a physical example.
Okay, let me give you, like your nothing is a physical example, yeah?
Well, you haven't described what my nothing is yet. You read the preface, like a number of people did, but I don't know if you got very far.
Actually, I read the whole book. I liked it.
What's my nothing?
Your nothing is...
What is my nothing?
Your nothing is quantum.
No.
It is.
No. No space, no time, no laws, no nothing.
But that's still a quantum haze.
No.
That is.
No, there's no quantum. There's no universe. There's no universe. Nothing. Zero, zip, nada.
So why did you say in your own book then that we will reduce to our own quantum haze?
Hamza, can I?
Well, he took a lot of my time.
Yeah.
Well, did you?
It's kind of dissolving into a discussion.
So we'll continue the discussion.
Oh, we will do.
No,
of course.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks very much, Hamza. Please come and sit down, brother.
Woo!
I didn't want to stop you in mid-flow there, but over to Professor.
There must be some Greek in Professor Kráus.
Yeah.
Look, okay, well, we can continue the discussion because it should be a discussion. My point is that the question, I repeat again, is what's more sensible? And what's more sensible, ultimately, is what produces more rational actions. And I'm sorry, if you talk about tolerance, I get so tired of hearing people talk about tolerance, but then I hear people talking about blasphemers. I should be allowed to blaspheme all I want, because ridicule is an important part of inquiry and discussion. Sometimes ridiculing something illuminates it. And I hear about blasphemers, I hate to say it, and this may be a complete misapplication of Islam. It could be that Islam, as it's practiced in many countries in the world, is a misapplication of Islam. But all I can see is intolerance when I see those principles applied. Intolerance to blasphemers, intolerance to homosexuals, intolerance in general. Now, the other thing I want to say is, this God, if we ask what's sensible, why would we think that this unproven God that is supposed to be the basis of not just Islam, but all religions, different gods, different characteristics, but the Islamic God, much like the Judeo-Christian God, is a real creep? This is a God worse than Saddam Hussein. Instead of torturing you just for your life, tortures you for infinity, forgive me the word, but eternity. Let me use that word. Eternity for not believing. For not believing, you're tortured for infinity. The tortures are actually described in the Quran, and you know it as well as I do. And the point is, if you just ask yourself common sense, if you were a divine being, say you had an ant colony that you made in your house, would you be offended if those ants didn't pay homage to you well, let's start with 50 times a day before Muhammad cut it down to 30 and then 5. Would you be offended if those ants didn't pay homage to you 5 times a day? And if they didn't look up to you or didn't recognize your existence, would you destroy them? No, I mean, it just seems so petty. So why should we believe in a hateful, unmerciful, petty, sadomasochistic, homophobic, sexist God? It's just irrational. It's not sensible. There's nothing. And the point is, and I don't want to single out Islam here. And I know I'm offending some people, but the same is true for the God of Moses. Okay? If you really believe that the scriptures were literally true, the morals in that book are reprehensible. It's okay when an angels appear to do a lot of things, including coming down and making revelations to Muhammad, which Muhammad didn't write down. As far as I know, the first example of the Quran was 20 years after he died, so there was a lot of talk. And some of that talk got turned into perfect writing well after Muhammad was dead. But those angels come down. But in this case, in the case of course, Lot, as you know, the angels came down, and they were men. They came in the form of men, which I don't think is allowed in certain versions of the Quran, at least. But anyway, they did. And then they were going to be raped. So what did Lot do? Of course, he said, don't rape them. Take my daughters. Because daughters are dispensable. What kind of moral lesson is that you want to learn? Okay? Now, I'm sorry, that's in the Bible. Actually, that's from my religion. Okay, or my ancestors' religion. I have none. Okay, so those are the kind of moral lessons that I find not sensible. And so I'm happy I picked the Old Testament and not the Quran to talk about immoral intolerance. The idea of punishing people for eternity for choosing to find something unlikely is not tolerant. The idea of punishing them in vicious, evil, ugly ways for all eternity is not merciful. It is the opposite of rational common sense. Now, in terms of explanatory things, let me just spend a few minutes teaching a little bit of science. So, if you have an infinite temporal, let's say time exists beyond our universe. Let's just allow for that because it's easier to describe that. And let's say our universe, a universe can, given the laws of nature, spontaneously come into existence. Okay? Then it will come into existence. It will come into existence at some time. And the fact that it came into existence at that time need not have any reason. It need not have any reason why it was that time rather than some other time. But whatever time it happens, it will come into existence, and people can say, there's some significance to that. But it must happen somewhere at some time, and there need not be any significance, any purpose, any intelligence for why it happened now instead of then. It's guaranteed to happen at some point. Now, if you say, during that creation, there are laws, one of which is the laws of quantum mechanics, which can create a universe with zero total energy. By the way, and by creating a universe, I mean a universe that didn't exist. There was no space, there were no times, and no laws, in fact. And then you come in and you say, okay, if that universe is created spontaneously, it must be created at some time. So a universe must come into existence. In fact, an infinite number of universes can come into existence if time is infinite. Okay? It's certainly possible. Then a universe will come into existence, and you can say, let me predict the properties of that universe. Well, lo and behold, the properties of that universe happen to be exactly the properties of the universe we live in, including the structure of the fluctuations of cosmic microwave background that collapse to produce all the galaxies and all the stars and the planets and you and me. That's explanatory. There's no explanation at that level in any way in your book. So the explanation of a universe that could come into existence from nothing without any purpose, without any planning, without any reason, is explanatory. Now, lest I be misconstrued, that is just plausible. Because we do not have a full scientific theory. But to make the claim, as I know you've often made, that because that there are certain things we will never understand, is to misunderstand science. There are lots of things we don't understand today, and that's the reason to go out and do science. It's just like Darwin said, he said, in the evolution of species, I'm describing the evolution of species. I'm not describing the origin of life. We'll never understand the origin of life. We'll no sooner understand the origin of life than we understand the origin of matter. Well, of course, he didn't realize that we'd one day understand the origin of matter. Just as I expect in your lifetime and my lifetime, we'll understand the origin of life. We'll understand how chemistry turns into biology. By doing experiments, testing, and not forcing our predilection that it's impossible. I had a debate recently where somebody said, it's impossible for non-life to turn into life. Well, that's a nice statement. It's a nice belief. And it's a belief you can have, but it's a belief that can be wrong. And that's the great thing about science, which you can call atheism if you wish. It's you're willing to change your beliefs. You're not assuming the answers before you ask the question. You're not assuming you know what's divinely right just because you interpret a certain book to mean a certain thing, and someone else may interpret it to mean something else. You will agree there are different interpretations of every book, including the Bible and the Quran. And so to presume that you know divine truth before you've asked the universe is not sensible. And I don't think I'll take any more time. Okay.
Thank you, Professor Kراوس. Now back over to Hamza. 3 minutes it will be, thereabouts.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you very much for your presentation. Now, I really want you to try and address some of my arguments. You produced something about with the Quran, but if you were attentive to my argument, the Quran says bring a chapter like it, not 2 verses from different chapters. So, again, it was a straw man of the articulation of what the Quranic miracle was. And I could spend more time maybe during the Q&A to explain what that is, but I specifically said bring 1 chapter like it. Your computer model, which I like to see evidence of, by the way.
But who just decides what's like it? I mean, do you decide or do I?
Okay, is that a different question?
To me, Shakespeare is more beautiful than the Quran.
That's fine.
Okay.
But,
or James Joyce.
Yes.
He doesn't use iambic
I understand, sir.
Okay.
But what you have to understand, sir, is that I repeated maybe more than once, it's not based on aesthetic reception and your opinions on beauty.
Who determined it?
Well, it's the reality, empirical reality.
No,
I'm going to explain.
Reality?
Let me explain what the argument is again, because from your onset you've misunderstood it. You thought it was
quoted
beauty.
People who said it couldn't have been created. But those are just literary scholars. What if I say, yeah, it could be created?
Yeah, let me just explain that, because your first presupposition was based on a falsehood, wasn't it? Yeah, you thought it was aesthetic reception. It's based upon the structural features of the Arabic language. And because I only have 2 minutes, I'll continue that in the Q&A, okay? So, also you're saying about that, look, if the universe began, and we could show that maybe empirically or deductively. My focus is on the deduction here. And I don't think you really address from the infinite perspective when we said that this is based on axioms and conventions in the mathematical realm of discourse, but in discrete physical parts, as you've admitted in your book, that can't happen. So we have a deductive argument that the universe began, which means it once wasn't there. Ontologically, if there wasn't a cause for that, you wouldn't have the universe in the first place. The second point I like to make...
No, there's you see the photon that's lighting you up from that thing?
Yes.
It didn't exist before it was emitted by the electron.
Yes.
Okay? It didn't exist.
Yes.
It wasn't there.
And you're saying there's no cause?
It wasn't, the point is, what I'm saying is, there can be physical causes for physical effects.
Yes.
Okay, but they don't have to be, but God doesn't have to pull the photon up. Just because the photon appears from nothing doesn't require something supernatural.
I agree. But
okay, so if a universe suddenly comes into existence where it wasn't before, it doesn't require something supernatural.
But I already gave you a defeater to the argument that you assume that when things begin to exist, they may not require any causes. And that defeater was...
Not any purpose. I didn't say cause. I just said if a universe can come into existence by physical causes,
yes,
where there's no universe to begin with, it will happen at some time. And your point was it happened, and therefore there's a reason why it happened, because it happened when it happened. Well, if it didn't happen then, it would have happened some other time, and we would have had this conversation at some
Let's calm down. You're putting words in my mouth, okay?
Okay.
What I'm saying to you, I'm not saying things like, I'm not talking about teleology. I'm not talking about there is a purpose behind...
Don't use definition. Did you not say our universe came into existence for a cause and there had to be a reason for it?
No, I didn't say reason.
There had to be a purpose?
No, I didn't say that. I said there is a cause.
I thought you said there was an intelligence. You gave a whole long argument.
Oh, that's after using conceptual analysis that you agree that there is a uncreated creator or a cause that was uncaused. Now...
Well, hold on, but forget all that. I just talked about our universe.
Yes.
Are you agreeing with me that our universe doesn't have to have any purpose or reason to create it?
No, of course I'm not. I don't agree with you. But that's not my argument. My argument is, deductively, was the universe once absent?
Yes.
Yes. If that's the case, then ontologically, which means the nature and source of reality, is that it couldn't have come into being without a cause.
Well, okay. First of all, I hope it's that way, because that'd be easier to understand.
Yes.
Okay? It's possible that it's not that way. Okay? So if it has, and you could take this out of my time if you want, I don't give a damn. The point is that maybe time exists outside of our universe, maybe it doesn't. Let's just pretend it does, and then our universe came into existence, and there was a physical cause for that. That's fine, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with our universe coming into existence for physical cause, just like that photon being created. But as I pointed out to you, it's equally possible that these notions that we have in our brains, because we're humans living at a classical level, that time exists and is a continuous flow, may break down. And if they break down at t equals 0, then any sense of the word cause becomes nonsensical. The word cause is a red herring in your terms. It's not worth discussing. It may not be relevant to the creation of our universe because there may not have been any time before it, and therefore this notion that every cause, every effect has a cause may be irrelevant if there's no time. Now, I don't know if that's the case, but I'm willing to ask the question, and I'm willing to do studies to see if it's reasonable.
Yes.
I'm not willing to presume the answer before I ask the question.
Well, of course, I agree.
Okay.
But the point is, the presumption here is that you require time, and that there's a specific physical definition for time. Now,
the presumption is after t equals 0, you require time. That's absolutely true. The presumption that you require time at t equals 0, if you took the equations as they're written, time would go out the window.
I don't have a contention with the physics. That's your job.
No, but there's no. Yeah. But if you take it as written, there's no time. The time has no meaning at t equals 0.
Okay, agreed.
Great.
According to the physics, I don't disagree with you. I highly respect that. But all of that is inductive in nature.
No, it's not.
Of course. What is it based on? Is it deductive?
It's based on observation.
Which is inductive.
Well, no, it's empirical. It's empirical. The problem is, it's empirical.
Okay, well, what's empirical?
Okay. Look, I don't care. Look,
do you have an infinite set of observations? Mm-hmm. Have you had an infinite set of observations?
Now, if you're going to tell me I read your something you wrote which really misrepresented science, you're absolutely right. If you're going to tell me science can never tell anything with absolute certainty.
Yes.
Okay.
Except
things that are wrong.
Yes.
That's what science can tell.
I agree.
Science can tell us the Earth isn't 6,000 years old.
Okay, good.
Science can tell us that science can tell us many things, and so
I don't disagree with you.
Okay,
I don't disagree with you.
Okay, so the fact that science can lead us closer to what is the underlying reality is absolutely true. And the fact that science can't say with anything with absolute certainty is absolutely true, except what's wrong.
Yes, I agree.
Okay? And it can say certain claims, for example, that the moon split in two when he was there, is wrong. Now, I know you're going to say
another red herring. Another red herring.
I know another red herring, but certainly...
Loads of fish in this room today.
No. Some people, as you know, some interpreters of that thought that was the case, but they're wrong. You agree with me?
That's it.
Do you agree that...
I'm making a different point here, Professor.
Okay, all I'm saying is this is a book of words, and you can interpret it many different ways, and some interpretation of those words
I'm going to address
are
that.
wrong.
I'm going to address that as well. But that's, look, we're going from so many different issues. It's a typical strategy of not knowing how to respond to a particular point. Look, the point of interpretation, for example, the Quran, for example, if we read the whole of the Quran holistically, we understand that it's probably the only religious book that gives you tools of interpretation. For example, the Quran says there are some open-ended verses, ambiguous verses, and they're specified. So in linguistics, it's called intra and intertextuality. Now, therefore, it creates a scope of interpretation. Yes, I agree there's interpretation, but there are some things that lie outside of the scope because you don't know the language, you don't know the interpretive tools, you don't follow the scholarly tradition, etc. So there is, yes, I agree, a scope of interpretation, but it's fixed. So that, in essence, is a red herring. The point I want to get to
what's
here...
different about that than, say, Christian theological's different interpretation of the Bible?
Well, that's very interesting. Well, for example, in the Protestant tradition, the reason they moved away from the Catholic Church is because they said, look, this is me and my book, and I could interpret the way I want. But now a lot of Protestants are coming back to the Catholic tradition because they're saying, how do I understand God's word? And that's why they see the church entity as an interpretive authority, do you see? So obviously they have their own confusions, but the book doesn't tell it how to interpret it. That's why you have the German School of Systematic Theology.
The Catholic Church, which now accepts evolution, for example, would say, you're right, the book doesn't tell us how to interpret this ridiculous first
But I just want to get back to my original point, which is, so
there's nothing unique about it. You keep pretending Islam is unique, and I don't see it.
Can we deal with a point at a time?
Okay. Yeah,
okay.
But you throw these things out.
We believe Islam is not unique.
If I don't
challenge
them,
Professor, we don't believe Islam is unique. We believe it's a universal message that believes in one true God. Don't enslave yourself to your ego and your desires and the bestial aspects of man or to the social pressure, loyal because I'm worth it. But free yourself from these shackles and worship the divine, which gives you true freedom. Because if you want real liberty, interestingly, the word ruh in the Arabic language means soul or self. And it comes from the triliteral stem.
Soul or self? Which one?
Both. Okay. In different contexts, okay? We just be nuanced, okay? Yeah. Not reductionist. So
what's a soul? You want to tell me what a soul is?
Well, when you die, you'll find out. Let me just get my point. Let me make my point.
That's a really bad explanation.
Well, come on.
Because it gives me something I can't test.
Listen, I'm the Greek. I'm supposed to be full of sophistry and rhetoric here.
Well, you are, but that's true. Okay.
The point I'm trying to say is that the word ruh etymologically shares the same meaning with the word raha, which means liberty and serenity. And interestingly, we all want to seek this type of liberty, but the irony is, from an existential perspective, what does it mean to exist? Who am I? We're all in a state of slavery because your birth, sir, your birth, madam, is just like the American writer once wrote. We're born and then we're sold into slavery. You never chose your birth.
Well, it was Rousseau who said that. Man is born free and lives forever.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Well done. Good. So let me get poetic here. Yeah. Okay. So the point is, we don't choose our birth. I didn't choose I was going to be Greek looking like a Pakistani. You never chose a...
If you shaved, you wouldn't look so Pakistani.
Well, I'm growing my hair just like yours.
Okay.
So,
it's true.
It's nice.
That's right.
So the thing I'm trying to say...
your hair, by the way.
Thank you. We're becoming friends now, yeah? So the point I'm trying to say is, look, let's be nuanced about some of the narratives from religion. That, in essence, that's how, you have to empathize and see the filters that the Muslim will use. And that's why a Muslim woman who may cover her hair, a Muslim man who may grow a beard, these are not reasons because it's like this kind of ridiculous type of blind slavery. We really understand that the only way to free yourself from the shackles of the ephemeral nature of social pressure, because we're social animals, of the very fact that you didn't choose your birth or your ethnicity or even your own gender, you free yourself from these shackles by what we call ubudiyya, a servanthood to the divine reality.
But the question I want to ask is it sensible? So why is it sensible for a woman to be covered up and not a man?
Well, I am covered.
No, you're not covered up. You're not covered up.
You're
not going to put it in a bag like some of the people back there.
Well, it's not really a bag.
No, it is. Yeah? As far as I'm concerned, it is.
Okay, look, that's a different question. I'm not going to get into the moral judgments of certain traditions, because at the end of the day,
and by the way, they're all only Islamic. I mean, if you want me to offend other religions, I'm happy.
No, I'm not saying that, Kras, but someone who is rationalizing incest doesn't have no more high ground to point the finger at Muslim women. I mean, and the other point. No, but let me finish.
I explained why.
Let me complete the sentence. I'm sure it wouldn't go ad infinitum. Okay. Let me make my point.
Well, we could go ad infinitum because it could last an infinite amount of time.
Potentially. So, not actually.
You agree?
Potentially, yeah, but not actually. That was my point, which you misunderstood. So the point I'm trying to say, Professor Kراus, is this: is that these pointing the finger at other traditions. Okay. Where is your ontological basis for an objective moral value like this?
Well, in fact...
Is it objectively wrong that she's wearing a bag?
What?
Is it objectively morally wrong? And how is it objectively morally
wrong? I asked if it's sensible.
Okay, is it sensible?
Okay. And so my question to you is, it seems to me that given the fact that I happen to view women and men as, we have differences, inherent genetic differences.
Of course, yes.
But in every other sense, we're equal human beings. And in fact, in many senses, as you know, there are advantages and disadvantages.
We don't disagree with that.
So I do not see any reason to treat women differently than men. It doesn't make sense to me. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, fair enough. Good. Okay. So the point is, when we make moral judgments, I know you use the word sensible, but other times we're making moral judgments.
I don't talk, unlike you, I don't talk about morals, because I try, in this sense, the question before us was not, is atheism moral, or is Islam moral? It's, is it sensible? And when people act...
So why have you spent 25 minutes pointing the finger and making moral judgments rather than trying to deal with my argument?
I didn't make
For example,
you thought a moral judgment about your misinterpretation of whether infinity is allowed in physics. I didn't make a moral judgment.
I never said that.
I made a factual
I never said that. I said it makes sense in physics because you need the mathematics to correspond to physical reality. I don't disagree with that. I am saying...
So you need the mathematics to correspond to physical reality. Is that what you just said?
Yeah, of course you do. According to physics.
Physical reality can allow for infinity.
According to what... I learned a lot from your book, actually. It was quite interesting. You said, even in your book, I think it was page 81, you said that essentially, there's the maths, and I need to improve my physics to ensure it's in line with the math. And interestingly...
No, I need to improve my math to ensure it's in line with reality.
Okay, good. So
what is the evidence of experiment?
Yes, good.
So if my math doesn't agree with the evidence of experiment, then I change my math.
And that's why I think, and I don't want to build a straw man, you made a conclusion in your book. You said, this is why you can't have an infinite anything.
No.
You said that.
You show me where I can't have an infinite anything.
Yeah,
Did I talk about infinite energy density?
Let me
find. Talk about whether the universe might be infinite?
Let me find it for you.
And by the way, if I did, I was wrong.
One second. That's honourable. That is honourable.
That to me is the worst kind.
That's honourable. No, that is honourable. I admit.
Offensive about these arguments is you quote people as if what they say matters. But the great thing about science is there are no authorities.
I agree.
There are no scientific authorities. Everyone can be wrong, and we all are.
That is honourable. That is honourable. I have
people who claim to be, including Benedict, before he stopped being Pope.
Yeah, 1 second. 1 second. Just bear with me. He wanted it here. It's here somewhere.
No, I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, please. This is good. Okay, so here we go. Infinity is not a pleasant quantity, however, at least as far as physicists are concerned, and we try to avoid it whenever possible. Clearly, the energy of empty space, or anything else for that matter, cannot be physically infinite.
The energy of anything.
No. You said...
I'm sorry.
Or anything else for that matter.
The energy of anything cannot be physically infinite.
Where's that there?
The energy of empty space or the energy of anything else.
You're reading another book now.
I wrote that. Well, Mohammed may not be here to talk about the Quran, but I'm here to talk about my book.
And you don't even know your own book.
And my book says, I repeat.
Yes, do that.
I repeat. Maybe I should change it into Arabic so you understand it. But the point is, the energy of empty space or the energy of anything else cannot be infinite.
Oh,
okay?
Okay,
That's
fair enough.
what I said.
Okay, good. So really, it's suggestive of my point.
No.
Sorry.
It didn't say space cannot be infinite.
Did you get this sign, by the way?
It didn't say space.
Oh, yeah.
It didn't say space cannot be infinite or time cannot be infinite.
Good.
Because they perfectly well can.
Okay, good. But there's another point you made. Wait. The other point is...
I mean, you're making a big mistake to try and talk...
No, I'm not.
You'll be happy to show me what you said if I misquote you.
Listen,
okay.
Professor Kراus, I can only read your words when you say, or anything else for that matter, means or anything else. But I know I shouldn't have...
Was that paragraph about energy?
Yeah, but...
Okay, just ask me.
Also, there's a context now, but when it comes to religion, there is no context.
No, there is.
But when it comes to physics, there's a context.
No, I talked to you about the fact that different interpretations lead...
Fair enough. I agree. I agree.
People have interpreted the Quran incorrectly.
I agree, Professor Kráus. But listen to this. What you have to understand is this. Do you agree that the universe started at a finite time ago?
Do I agree?
Yes.
Because
you made that point.
13.72 billion years ago.
Yes.
It's as far back as we can go to about the first millionth of a
10 to the minus 43 or something.
Well, no.
Has it changed?
Empirically, we know it to about a millionth of a second. Yeah.
Okay, excellent.
Of course
Good.
It started finite time
good.
ago.
Exactly. So, that I said was suggestive evidence for my deductive reasoning. Okay?
Well, it was suggestive evidence for the Rig Veda, Akhenaten.
Yeah, I know. Good. Let's carry on now.
Myth, it's just as beautiful. It was created.
I agree. But then I said, but since we have the best possible explanation, which is an uncreated creator, or there is a cause that was not caused. Because I gave you all the logical explanation. This is the point. You should be attentive.
No, I have the best explanation. It came from nothing by physics.
Yes, but your nothing, is it really like nothing?
No space, no time. Our universe didn't exist.
So there was
no quantum foam. There was nothing where our universe existed. There was no space and no time. Everything we see, this room that we're in, did not exist.
When your friend Vilenkin comments on that... Can we have a Q&A, please? 1 second. So when your friend Alexander Vilenkin, who's a renowned cosmologist...
a good friend. Yes.
A good friend. I mean, I read some of his works. It goes way beyond me. I have to admit that.
And in fact, you know what?
Yeah.
You know what? In fact, Alex Vilenkin, as you'll read in my book, as I did, in fact, he scooped me because he wrote...
Yes, he did. I read that. Yeah, that was very interesting.
Talked about a creation of space from no space.
Yes, I agree.
Okay.
Recently, he has mentioned that there is a spatio-temporal boundary, right?
No.
What has he said?
Well, he is, I mean, you know, we can talk about the details of the instanton that he described in
yes.
But in fact, there is no space at the central point of that.
Okay, agreed. So, see, my main point is that this evidence is suggestive of an evidence that is what I would call far more stronger. It has great epistemic value, and I'm going to end on this. Because it has great epistemic value, because as you admitted, the inductive method doesn't lead to certain conclusions, whereas the deductive method leads to certainty. Now, you can't get it all the time.
Wrong.
But no, if the premises...
I can be certain about something be wrong. Can you?
I agree. But Kráus, if the premises are sound and the logic is valid, it's still certain. You still have to prove to me...
Yeah,
but Kráus, Professor Kráus, you still have to prove to me that the deductive logic I used is unsound or not valid, and you haven't done that.
Well, if you don't think I have, I do.
Okay, I'm really sorry to interrupt you, Professor Kráus, Hamza. You're going at it hammer and tongs, but there's a whole bunch of guys out there who want to sort of have a say, okay? Okay, guys, settle down. We're going to get the first question right now.
Okay, my first question is to Professor Kráus, and this is just to sort out the whole thing we were talking about. I just opened up your page, and it says, nothing is something. There you go.
That's the title of a chapter.
That's the title of a chapter. Nothing is something, right?
And you know what I meant?
No, I'm going to ask my second question now.
Okay.
Your whole book is based on mathematics, and mathematics, as you know, is based on deduction.
No, it's based on evidence.
Okay, and you use mathematics throughout your book, and you say deductive...
Show me the equations in my book. Show me the equations. Are there equations?
Yes, they are.
Well, they're one or two. The book's 200 pages long.
Okay, let me just ask my question. My first question was, you said nothing is something as soon as you open the book. Yeah. Secondly, you said deduction doesn't work, and maths is based upon deduction.
I said it may not work.
No, you said it in the opening. Deduction doesn't work, and your book is full of mathematics and deduction. Mathematics is based upon deduction. So how do you... it's actually a good introduction to logical fallacies.
Oh.
Professor, you want to say something?
Yeah, okay. I mean, these rhetorical things are so ridiculous. But okay. I like catchy phrases. And when I said nothing is something, it's a chapter title. My point, which many philosophers don't understand, and I guess, anyway, is that nothing is a physical quantity. It's not a philosophical quantity. It's not an imaginary quantity. Nothing in physics is the absence of something. So therefore, to understand what nothing is, you first have to ask the question, what is something? And to do that requires a lot of work. It's required all of the work of the 20th century of a lot of bright people, experimentalists and physicists. So what I tried to do is explain what we mean by something so that people could actually learn what you mean by the absence of something. I tried to be very clear and accurate. So it was just, in fact, since I wasn't trying to convince people of anything, I was just trying to explain it. The point is, in physics, nothing is the absence of something. So to understand what the absence of something is, you have to describe, you have to know what something is to know what the absence of that thing is, first. Secondly, mathematics is mathematics. You're absolutely right. But physics isn't mathematics. I did a degree in mathematics, and I did a degree in physics. I learned I wasn't a mathematician. And more importantly, I learned many of the best mathematician colleagues of mine weren't physicists. Because the universe, the way physics works, is that we make mathematical models of reality, but we don't decide that they're right. We say, in fact, I do it all the time, and most of them are wrong. I sit on a good day trying to make a mathematical model that explains reality. They go out and test it, and 99.99% of the time it's wrong, because that's the way science works. If it didn't work that way, anyone could do it. So it's not inductive in the sense, the mathematics is a useful language. In fact, it's the only useful language to describe nature, as far as we can tell. But it doesn't, we don't decide. Mathematics can describe an infinite number of universes. You can write mathematical descriptions of an infinite number of universes. Most of them are in our universe. The way we determine if they're our universe is we go out and do experiment. Science is experimental. Without experiment, pure thought leads nowhere. If you locked a particle physicist in a room and asked her to come up with a theory of reality without any experimental observation, she'd come up with the wrong answer.
Okay, you didn't actually answer the question there. Just to reiterate, because you didn't actually answer it, yeah? You said deduction doesn't work.
No, I didn't.
No. Yes, you said it in the opening.
I said it doesn't have to work.
Let me just repeat the question because you didn't understand the first time, right? You said deduction doesn't work, and your book has mathematics. And what I want to ask you is...
fine, I agree with you. Next question.
Okay, what is deduction? That's my question. What is deduction? Do you even know what deduction is? Because I studied mathematics at university. I don't even think you know what it means. What is deduction?
You know what? Yeah.
What is deduction?
Let me just say, let me just say this, okay? You can make definitions of things. I can try and figure out how the universe works. I'll make progress, and you'll sit here.
Okay, thanks very much. Next question, please.
My question is to Hamza, and it's about the things he said about science in Islam. He's done a research paper on embryology within the Quran, and the idea that I'm getting is that it's sort of better to actually understand Arabic more to get more scientific ideas out of the Quran. But where is the LHC equivalent in terms of Islam?
Where's that?
What is the LHC equivalent?
LHC,
Large Hadron Collider equivalent.
Large Hadron
Okay,
Collider.
in Islam.
Yes, or genomics. I mean, wouldn't it be a better idea just to study the Quran and come out with these results?
Okay.
And when can we see those
It's a good
big
question.
results?
The first point is that essay that was written wasn't to show that the Quran gives science. If you read the essay, it basically says the Quran is very general and at most places concerning science quite ambiguous. Now in Islamic theology, these verses that we call teleological, they're there for specific ends just to make you think. Like only someone really silly is going to think that you're going to find quantum physics and embryology in a holy book. That's not the divine, that's not the will of the Creator.
And St. Augustine said for the Bible too. The Bible isn't scientific.
Yeah, but it's not a scientific book. Like Al-Shatibi, he was a theologian, and he said, look, this book, the Quran, is there to make you think about the most important questions about life. Man, life, and the universe. Who am I? Whose am I? Why am I? For whom am I? These existential questions. And
I agree with that, by the way. I think it probably is that.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
So the point I'm trying to make here from the embryology perspective is to show not that the Quran is scientific per se, but that its language is not representative of a 7th century science. That was my main point. So it's got nothing to do with the fact...
Wouldn't there be more?
Sorry?
Wouldn't there be more science in there?
No, but why should there be? My main...
No,
well, in some cases there is, but not in terms of here are the details. It's more like, you know the unique thing about the Quranic discourse, for example, when it talks about natural phenomena, it will present a word, for example. And that word will have a scope of meaning. And you could check this meaning out for yourself. And interestingly, it's aligned with past errors and future accuracies as well, which is very interesting. So, yeah, but I would argue that in some cases that you do see future accuracies. However, I don't believe. Let me make my point. My argument for the Quran is not a scientific one, because I believe science, as Professor Karaus admitted and really didn't answer somehow, was that the inductive method doesn't give you certainties. So we believe the Quran we can prove deductively, and it tells us to do the science to see how things work. We may be wrong, we may be right. So it would be only erroneous to say that something that is deductive can be proven via something that's speculative or inconclusive. And this is why, I empathize with you, the current trend in our modern, what we call da'wah, propagation of Islam, is heavily reliant on science. But we have to understand what science is. That's why I wrote the essay on have we misunderstood evolution. I don't deny the science of evolution. I just go to modern academics on the philosophy of science. And there are issues, like the problem of hard or weak empiricism, the problem of induction, falsification, and so forth. So from that perspective, I think you've misunderstood the point of the paper. But I hope I elaborated.
To suggest that evolution was not as well and tested a scientific idea as gravity or quantum mechanics. We make new drugs based on it. In fact, the evidence of evolution makes evolution a fact.
Okay. I even addressed that.
Yeah, and I tried to read it, and it seemed to me that you were suggesting it wasn't. But anyway, I may have misunderstood it. So I'm willing to agree that I may have misunderstood it. But that's the lesson I was getting out of it.
Okay, good. Maybe we could have a coffee afterwards.
Okay, we're going to go to the Jazakallah khair. We go to the next question, please.
Thank you for the very emotive debate. My question is to Professor Lawrence Krauss.
Why did I guess that? Okay. No, go on. Anyway.
Firstly, let's not conflate science with atheism.
What?
Firstly, let's not conflate science with atheism, as we would all agree that science doesn't logically entail atheism. It is methodologically neutral. Therefore, my question is this. Science being an empirical method based on observation and experimentation can never answer metaphysical questions such as the existence of God. So, then it would arise, how do you, as an atheist, maintain your position? Because you said, for example, empirically speaking, we can't say God exists or does not exist. Rationally, deductively, you already ruled out. Therefore, how can you rationally justify your belief? How can you say it's common sense and nonsensical, please? Thank you very much.
It's a good question. I should clarify that. I think it's a very good question. And so, let me call that question. Okay, let me try to clarify this. I want to more, again, emphasize that atheism is not a belief. Okay, it's not a belief. As a scientist, I don't believe anything. As a scientist, I don't believe anything. If you use the word belief, scientists shouldn't use the word belief. There are things that are more likely and less likely. In fact, in the spirit of Hamza, science can say nothing with absolute certainty. It can say something is very, very likely or something is very, very unlikely based on the evidence of experience and testing. I can't see you, but I know you're there. Okay, and so I find it easier to talk to a person. Okay, and no, stay there. I can see you now. So the question is, what is more likely? That's all atheists are saying. And the atheists are saying, look, the first thing they're saying, I mean, people who claim they're atheists, and by the way, most scientists don't think enough about God to even know if they're atheists, because God's irrelevant. God never comes up in any scientific conference, in any discussion, anywhere. It doesn't. Because, in fact, we're just trying to figure out how the universe works. You're absolutely right also to the fact that I want to stress one more time, that science, and I may slightly differ with my friend Richard Dawkins about this, I don't think a lot, science does not require atheism. And the proof of that is empirical. Since I believe empirical proof, I have several colleagues of mine who are very good scientists who aren't atheists. Therefore, since they're very good scientists and they're also not atheists, science doesn't require atheism. Now, people can hold contradictory ideas at the same time. That's one of the reasons. But science can never disprove purpose in the universe. All we can ask is, given the evidence of our observation, do I think it is more likely that there's a personal God that cares about this random planet around a random galaxy in the middle of 400 billion galaxies, in a universe in which everything we see is just 1% of the whole universe, you get rid of us and all the galaxies and everything, the universe would be largely the same. We're a bit of cosmic pollution. It seems ridiculous to imagine, for me, based on everything I see and my common sense, to imagine the universe was created for me. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Professor. Let's go to the next question.
Hello, Mr. Karaus, and assalamu alaikum, Mr. Tezortsis, for a very good talk. I just have a question for Hamza. So you started off talking about infinity, and I mean, a lot of these arguments were sort of William Lane Craig type arguments, who, by the way, Fox News loves. Now, my question is, we've got a guy here who's written 300 books in astronomy, cosmology, whatever, and I mean, there is a lot of talk about Islam, about the Quran having scientific evidence behind it, cosmologically as well. Why didn't we ask him these questions? Why didn't we say, well, I don't know, you said that, you don't know, so why not ask him? He's there. I mean, why not? This is a forum for conversation. Why didn't we have... Well, I didn't hear one time, except for when you mentioned quantum vacuum, where he explained to you what quantum vacuum is. Yes. Like, other than that, I didn't hear anything. So I'm really interested as to why that conversation didn't happen in here.
Because my argument wasn't a scientific one.
But
I could do that in Starbucks or for the leftists amongst you in another coffee shop.
Just like William Lane Craig often tries to
No.
use the evidence of the Big Bang.
No, let's be attentive to my argument. It wasn't a key premise.
Yeah,
it was.
Absolutely.
I even repeated.
I guarantee you, I agree with you. It was not scientific
at
all.
Exactly. Well done. So, my point was, it was just suggestive. If you remove that argument, you still have my deductive argument that hasn't been addressed.
No, I know. Yeah. What I'm saying is, then why did you use the linguistic argument? Why not this,
Because
there's so many arguments.
I don't hold the view that the scientific argument per se is strong enough to become a deductive
Right, so it has to be linguistic.
So let's make
No, there's many others. There's historical, there's numerical. I could give them to you now.
Historical is also based on evidence. Let me make this clear, because it could be a real difference, and it should just represent our fundamental differences.
Yeah, of course.
You don't believe that your beliefs should conform to the evidence of reality.
No, of course not.
Okay.
I don't.
Good. Okay,
no, but
good. That's fine.
But Kraus, you just even agreed that science itself, which we love and we think is a mercy from the divine reality to use, that has correlated verses indicating we must use reality and be empirical. You've assumed that empiricism itself would lead to an understanding of reality, absolutely. But you agreed that's not the case.
I never said any absolutes. I've always said plausible, likely, unlikely. That's the way science works. And the whole question here is, what's more sensible? And the point is, once again, I said empirically, 1,000 religions, you're all atheists for 999 of them, I'm just an atheist for one more.
Yeah, but this is precisely my point.
Yeah.
Why would I therefore use an empirical inductive method to form beliefs that I believe are certain? That would be obnoxious of me. So what I do is, if I believe something is so certain as the existence of the divine and the miraculous nature of the Quran, I'm not going to use an inductive method which is speculative and probabilistic, which you would even agree ranges from 0 to 99%. I would have to rely heavily on what you would call other methods, epistemic routes to knowledge, such as deduction.
And are they sensible?
They are sensible.
And here's the question, as Carl Sagan would have said, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And the claim that you're absolutely certain of the truth, that you personally are absolutely certain of the truth, is a remarkable claim.
No.
And the evidence you presented was not...
Straw man. I'm absolutely certain of very basic truths, and this is called epistemic foundationalism.
No, I don't have that presumption. I'm not that presumptuous.
Well, you obviously have a presumption that induction works. That's the truth in itself.
No, I don't have the presumption that I know the truth.
Let's presume there's more questions as well. Okay, let's go.
Hi, my question is for Hamza.
Oh, yes.
My question is, I just want to clear something up before I go on. Do you think that logic and science are two separate paths to truth? Because Professor Karaus here is taking the scientific approach, you've been taking the logic approach. Do you believe they're mutually exclusive, that you can have a logical...
No, of course not, because you can have a deductive argument that its premises rest on induction. So that's fine. And an inductive argument, by definition, is empirical by nature. But the point I'm trying to say is, there is a difference between induction and deduction. That is a clear distinction.
Well, sure.
Exactly. So the point is, if we do have a valid and sound deductive argument, then for God's sake, let's address it. Not just say, oh, you guys put women in bags, or you scratch your ear on a Sunday, or you don't clean your earwax, or all these kind of random red herrings that were coming along, right?
So the point is, I tried to ask empirically what's to me, and maybe this is a different word. Maybe we should have defined the word sensible.
Please,
yes.
Sorry. Could I interrupt? Sorry, that wasn't the question. My question was that. If you think logic is, you said you didn't think it was independent, but do you think that your premises, because that's what your arguments rest on, are informed by empirical evidence?
Some of them are supported, but the majority of them are deductive themselves.
Okay, next question.
And that's what makes deductive very strong. If you have premises that are deductive, and the conclusion is sound and valid, therefore it's a deductive argument. So that makes it a very strong argument. And that's why I said it would be irrational to take induction over deduction if you have a deductive argument.
How do you know that they're valid if you don't test them?
Because you know them conceptually and metaphysically and philosophically.
Just like that woman knew to drown her 4 kids.
Yeah, but, okay. No.
Okay.
No. Let me address this question. Sorry. The interesting thing is, your very statement is a metaphysical statement. It could be translated metaphysically. For example, induction is the only method to use to try and establish or know reality. That statement itself is self-defeating. It can't even be proven by empiricism. It's an inductive statement. So the point is, I give an example. It's like you have almost. It's like you have this almost crude.
I don't claim to know what's valid just by knowing it.
No, but you have to in that very statement in itself, because it's almost like you're presenting this crude scientism or logical positivism.
Stop using words. Talk to me in English.
Okay. Oh, but when you use words, it's great. When I use words, I can't do that.
I don't think I've used very much jargon at all. If I did, I apologize.
Okay, scientism is, let me define it for you. It is the assertion that science is the only way to form conclusions about reality. Okay? That statement itself is, one, self-defeating, because science can't prove that statement. Secondly, science itself, that statement itself is flawed because science can't prove mathematical truths. Also, it can't prove ontological truths. It can't prove moral truths, historical truths. If you study epistemology... Sorry, excuse me, sir.
How do you know it can't prove historical truths?
Let me make a point, sir.
How do you know it can't prove moral truths? So you're making these
Okay, let me make my point. How do we know Aristotle existed?
There's lots of evidence.
Okay, let me give you a piece of evidence that I know. We know him through Plato. Okay?
It's highly likely that he existed, which is what science would say.
Yeah, but let me make my point. Even anyone studying epistemology, which is the study of knowledge and belief, you would know that the majority of your opinions in this room as well is based on non-empirical evidence. It's based on... Let me finish.
I understand that could be wrong.
Yeah, but
Aristotle may not have existed.
Yeah, but you're missing a point. I'm trying to show you there's other routes to knowledge, sir. Such as testimony, for example. Authentic and valid testimony.
Oh my goodness. You really believe in testimony as proof of do you really believe that?
But Professor Kraus, do
you really believe that because I say...
Let's not dig a hole for ourselves.
Someone did something, it happened?
Go to the Berkeley website on the scientific method. It says one of the majority aspects...
I don't go to websites, I just do science.
Yeah, okay, well, that's very great. Well, do this science then. Listen to this science. The Berkeley website says the key part of the scientific method is also the workings of other scientists. That you
test and you don't trust. Yeah. And you repeat their experiments because you don't trust them.
Yes, I agree. Wait. But there's a lot of science.
You don't trust other people's results.
Excuse me, sir. There's a lot of science that requires testimony, yeah?
What?
Lots of science.
What?
Okay, I'll give you an example. Have you done every single experiment concerning evolution?
No.
So you believe it's true? Thank you very much.
I don't know.
What else do you want to say?
Do you want me to answer? You want me to answer? You want to answer your question?
Of course I do. Of course I do.
You get an answer before I even answered it. Come on.
Okay.
You're accusing me of things I did to you.
Yeah, no, I'm learning from the best.
I told you, I don't believe in anything. I think, based on the evidence of my experience, and everything I see in the world around me, that evolution is highly likely.
Okay.
And that's what I would call a fact.
So when you had an interview...
Unbelievably highly likely.
Okay.
As highly likely as even though I haven't ever been in space, although I wouldn't mind.
Look, I believe in gender equality, and the only woman who wants to answer a question in the room right now. She's standing there. Let's do it.
Okay. I applaud that. I applaud you for that.
I just wanted to make a comment about the incident that happened before this event began. I acknowledge that the brother who couldn't find a seat where he was coming from, and I believe that he has a right to sit where he wanted to, but there has been some misunderstanding. Firstly, Islam makes it very clear that equality is incredibly important, and that no black man, for example, is superior to a white man, and vice versa. But the issue here was not one of superiority, as no one imposed segregation upon him. He was allowed to sit with the ladies at the back, and he was also allowed to sit at the front with females. But if some of the ladies chosen to sit at a distance from the men, why must he impose himself upon us? If I sat in a restaurant with my friends away from men, would it be appropriate for him to join me at my table too? And I'm basically offended by his disrespect for my values.
Okay.
Let me respond. Although I'm not the organizers, let me respond. Look, the point is, as I said, I don't think people should be uncomfortable. Okay. And they should move if they're uncomfortable. However, you chose to come to an event that wasn't segregated. If you felt uncomfortable by that, I think you have the right not to be here and watch it on video. But you chose to do that, and therefore, and I realize that you may be uncomfortable with sitting with men, and I respect that. You shouldn't be forced to do that. But if you choose to go to a hockey game or a what do they call it here, football game, which is really soccer, then you subject yourself to the social conventions of the time. So I respect your desires, and I don't want you to be forced to do that. And in fact, you should have moved away if it was offensive. But the point is that this was a non-segregated event, and you knew that coming in, and you therefore were subject to the possibility that you might be near someone, and that was your choice.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. You guys, mashallah. Oh, sorry.
Don't be sorry.
I've been sitting on the fence the whole night, you see.
It doesn't offend.
Okay, it's painful sitting on fences. Hamza and Professor Karaus, I think you guys have been amazing tonight. Don't you think?
I don't think so.
But you still got to convince the audience up there, so you've got 2 minutes each.
Oh, well, no, I'm glad we had more dialogue than, as I once said, because I just think the debate format is a stupid format. Forgive me. It just doesn't lead to the kind of interaction. Actually, there's been some positives that have come out of the fact when Hamza and I have talked that have been much more positive than when people make these rhetorical long statements and trying to find things and try and sneak the other person into some logical contradiction. It's just not good for education. My intent, and I'm sure I've offended people here, my intent was not to offend. I always offend, and I offend some of my scientific colleagues too. My intent was just to raise questions and encourage people to think about issues. And for that, I hope that some of the statements I've made will cause people to think. And indeed, my whole point is that given access to information, and I believe you should get access to information about the world really works, which is why I write scientific books and I speak, because I think these are some of those beautiful ideas people have ever come up with, that we shouldn't be afraid of them, we shouldn't fear them, we shouldn't view them as if they offend our beliefs, that's a good thing, because it means our beliefs are wrong. And that, as I say to students all the time, is the greatest gift we can have. Changing our minds and learning is what's produced the progress that allows this room to happen, that allows these video cameras to be recording things. So I just hope that as I hope I am willing to change my beliefs or change my mind in the presence of evidence and get information, that I hope that some of the things I've said have spurred your thinking, and I certainly don't want to convert you into anything. And so, thank you for listening.
Hamza. Oh dear. You know what? Something inside me thought I knew it would be like this, because when I watch Professor Karaus, although I disagree with him, I love his style, and my dad would love your style as well. It's like, I don't care, I'm going to be me, get over it. Wow. So I do respect that. Good. And the other thing I do respect...
You're that way too, don't you think?
Yes, we're the same.
Okay, well, then
we're the same.
That's why
there was like almost an explosion here on atomic levels. Yeah? I mean, interestingly, we have a lot in common. We both like Star Trek. So, you know,
I know it's not real.
Sorry,
you gave me the line.
Yeah, I give him that one. I give him that one. Okay, good. Right. So, first and foremost, I think there was a bunch of discussion on the definition of a miracle that I presented. I think maybe we should have more useful discussion on maybe the coherent definition that we presented. Concerning the literary form is unique. Again, I think there was a misunderstanding between aesthetic reception and unique literary form, and the computer analysis that was brought as an example wasn't based on a whole chapter, which is based on the inimitability of the Quranic discourse. Also, I think we brought forth a deductive argument to show that the finitude of the universe, and therefore it couldn't have come via nothing. Once it was in a state of non-existence, then it was brought into being. It couldn't self-create. It couldn't be created by something else that was created because of the absurdity of the infinite regress. Therefore, it makes sense that it was created by something uncreated or caused by something that's uncaused. And it's in line with our definition of causality, which is something that produces effect, which allows asymmetric causality. Also, when we talked about the infinite, we talked about the quantitative infinite, not the qualitative infinite. And I think the examples the professor gave were based on axioms and conventions in the mathematical realm of discourse rather than in reality. So that's all I have to say. I don't think the key premises of my argument were addressed. And I think it shows the veracity of Islam from that perspective, because if it was so wrong and so rubbish and so nonsensical, we would have had a strong counter-argument from that perspective. But this is going to be unaddressed until the Day of Judgment, I believe. But I think what we all have to learn is that, you know what? We can sit on a table. We can speak together. We may be angry and rhetorical. And by the way, I so apologize if I offended anyone, especially Professor Karaus. I did say things that I shouldn't have said for a highly respected academic like himself. So we have to humble ourselves for his achievements, and some of the words I used were not appropriate, even though they may have sounded nice rhetorically, but that's a different issue. The point is, you know, at the end of the day, let's be human, let's connect with one another without presuppositions, and that's very hard to do. But the only way to do that is just really divorcing our drama and our presuppositions when we try to engage with someone, and that's what we teach in our courses all the time. Engage with a human being, not just with his beliefs or your perception of who he is. We didn't quite get there today, but you know what? It's the beginning. God bless you all.